All right. Hi, how's it going? I'm Prismfold, and today we're going to be looking at the track Dancefloor, which I released about 2-3 weeks ago, and here's how I made the track. So first things first, we'll just go over the drums briefly, just starting from the top here, and then I'll go on to the bass line, the lead, the transitions, mixing, all that good stuff. So here's the intro drums. So there's some interesting things going on in there. You got a kick going through a vocoder here, which I actually did on accident. Meant to throw a hi-hat through it, but sounded cool. That's going through a ping pong delay, high pass with an EQ, and then going through 2 instances of LFO tool for the side chaining. This one on the right is acting like a swell, so the volume goes up, while this one, of course, is ducking the kick. And the kick and snare, actually, nothing too crazy. Very exciting. Whenever I use loops, my motto is if you're going to take a shortcut, at least be creative about it. So in this case, I found a good drum loop instead of looking through tons of samples of hi-hats, and I spliced up parts of it so that it wasn't just the same loop, and I even put part of another loop here. So if I play this part, oops. So what that is part of this big pre-clap with a big clap, which sounds cool with all the other drums. And you'll hear that come in on the drop. It just kind of gives it a little extra flavor instead of just having one clap. And in the drop here, pretty much the same thing. There's a couple elements coming in, including a cowbell and a reversed kick. Let's play that part here. Oh, this part's kind of like a fill. Same thing, use part of a fill or part of a loop and just used it like a fill. There's a Control-Alt-F on Ableton. You can control the fades. And so you just kind of bring it in like that. So that's there. And then the hi-hats and the cowbell comes in here. This cowbell is just a pretty generic sample. I went through a lot of percussion parts on here. I couldn't figure out what to use. Just settled on a cowbell because cowbell sounds cool. And then for the hi-hat here, I have a little bit of a vocoder and I think a reverb as well. Let me solo that. No, that's part of the sample. Maybe I was messing around with it. Oh, well, that's actually a good trick. If you have a very tight and very constricted hi-hat, a shaker, any kind of percussion really, adding a vocoder and just toning down the dry wet knob while increasing the release knob can give you a really organic sounding release to the percussion. So as you increase the release, it kind of gives it a tail, and keeping it kind of subtle in the background, it kind of creates almost like a reverb when it's playing along with everything else. I think this is just a snare. Yep. So that's this part, which is where the wailing synths come in. And you'll notice everything's kind of spread out. It's got its own place. And that's actually kind of a battle I fight with things like percussion, claps, loops. It's very easy to quickly kind of become overwhelmed with too many elements in the track. Because, you know, this is just, the point of drums is just for tempo and for groove. You know, you got a bass line, some stabs, and like I said, that wailing synth as well. Kind of finding a space for everything is a challenge in and of itself. So it helps to kind of put things like every fourth bar, every eighth bar, every other bar. You know, if I put the cowbell on every offbeat and then everything else, you know, things can very quickly kind of get out of control. Oh, this part here. Almost forgot about this. This is just 2 vocal samples, and I just threw it through Renaissance Reverb at full wet dry send. So it's just a huge... Nothing too particular about it, just sounded cool in the mix. So I left it in. Just something... little unexpected things like that are kind of fun to put in a track, like a cowbell. All right, so that's pretty much it for the drums. Not too much progression in the drums as far as that goes, even in the intro. So that's the drums. The bass line I want to touch on because I got a couple comments about the bass line, and I appreciate the compliments. It's a trial and error trying to come up with a fun bass line. So what I did for this is Serum. And my go-to technique for something like this is to make a simple bass sound, but not try to check all the boxes when you're making it. So for this bass sound, you'll notice that it's just one oscillator, and it's just going through distortion and multi-band compression. And that's all I wanted to do. I want to keep it simple. And in terms of the actual low ends, I might just use a sine wave in mono. And then that way, this can be the texture sound. But I don't have to worry about how consistent the low end sounds because I have that sine wave. But that's not the case here, I believe. Whoops. And so for this part, I have, like I said, Serum. And then for the right bass line, yep, you guessed it, Serum. But you'll notice that the waveforms are just slightly different. They're pretty similar. I basically duplicated the left bass line and then just changed the waveform. Even just changing the waveform slightly is a good way to create separation between the bass lines as a whole. So if I play both of them. I don't like when bass lines and leads are always stuck in the center in dance tracks, especially when it's not that hard to just make them separate. So I try to take every opportunity I can to give them a nice width and to kind of jump out of both speakers at once. Yeah, I don't think there's a sine wave for the bass line. I think it's all, yeah, it's all Serum there. There's also a bit crushed kind of an accent that comes in the second half, and that is just this. Really subtle, but when played with the bass line, and it kind of creeps up in there as at the end of the bar, which is kind of a fun thing to add. I don't think this is anything. Yeah, it's just a square wave going into a dance sampler, which is like a bit crusher. Using the distortion pre-filter, and boosting it can really add some harmonics. So if I boost it a lot, you can make it really subtle. It's just a good way to add some character to something like that. That's pretty much it for the bass line. In the beginning, it's low pass, of course. Kind of tease it a little bit. You know, that's that. What else we got here? There's a lot of stuff in here that wasn't actually used in the track, like this part here. This is muted. I always forget to delete stuff like that. So if you see something that I don't go over, it probably wasn't even supposed to be here in the first place. I just forgot to delete it. Moving on to the brass. This is actually a sample that I heard and thought, wow, that'd be really cool to use in a track. And it happened to be the same key, D sharp. But I thought, I don't like just throwing a sample on the timeline, so I got a brass Ensemble, which is it's like an Ableton instruments. If you go to abletonlive.com, they have their own instruments that you can download and access under packs. So I have it here under orchestral brass. So if you're wondering if it's a VST, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. It's from Ableton. So that's basically on D sharp. Yeah, very exciting. And then a trombone section on D sharp. Yeah, just adds a little bit to the... I don't even know if it's that noticeable, but, you know, either way. So that's the brass part. The samples, nothing really special. I just spliced it and then duplicated it. And I think I added a vocoder. Yep, I added a vocoder. I think this is it.
Make that bass prop.
Yeah, because without the effects...
Make that bass prop.
Sounds kind of boring. So added a vocoder to add a little bit of sustain and a very quick delay to kind of give it... If you overdo it, I'll turn up the feedback so you can hear it, but it kind of gives it like a robotic sound. I'll increase the wet.
Make that bass prop.
So it's like a slap delay kind of thing.
Make that bass prop.
It sounds cool when you make it really subtle. Instead of just throwing a plain vocal sample on, you can make it sound robotic. Let's see. What else we got here? Here's the here's the wailing synths. I believe this was actually a riser preset. I was kind of stuck on what to use for the sounds, and I was just flipping through bored. And I got this, and I thought, well, that sounds kind of cool. So then I chopped it up on this part, and then at the end of the fourth bar, I duplicated it, and it comes in, has this cool dissonant kind of... So that's how I did that. Nothing too special. Just, again, just layers on top of layers. And then this one here is the same thing. It's just an octave up. And that's going into delay to kind of transition out of the big, I guess we can call it chorus, into the verse. Because when everything just stops, it's kind of awkward. So ending a lot of the synths with a delay, either a quarter note or an eighth note delay or a big reverb, having everything kind of wash away and fade out really helps transition to the next part of the song without everything just kind of stopping and shifting. And then the synths here on the second verse are the same as the ones in the intro, which is Serum, believe it or not. So just same thing, distortion, multi-band compression to bring out some of the highs, high passing it, and then hitting it with an overdrive. There's a delay, OTT, which is just bringing out a little bit of the brightness. Another high pass, excuse me, another high pass, and then a reverb, just to kind of give it a little bit of sustain without the reverb. Yeah, it sounds super dead. And of course, LFO tool, very, very quick and helpful tool, because not only are there sidechain presets that can help speed up the process of having to sidechain every track in your project, but you can literally just grab this and just move it around and adjust the actual sidechain, or the ducking, I'm sorry. So you can remove all the attack instantly, or you just leave a little bit of it in. I don't remember what that was set to before, but sounds okay. And then I have some accents here, which is playing with this. It's a common theme in my music is I like to add little accents to things, just little subtle things, either an octave up or an octave down with some kind of effect, just to kind of make sure things don't get too monotonous. And the second drop is pretty similar to the first one. The timing is just different on the bass lines. So nothing too crazy there. And then the outro. Is that vocoded kick. And all the percussion kind of closing in. So yeah, that's just about everything. As far as the effects go, there's not a whole lot of stuff. Nothing too crazy, just standard risers and drops. I tend to use drops and then just reverse them for the riser because it's a smoother transition. Use a different riser. There's an impact here. That's coming in before the drop. So it's kind of adding some impact. This is all building up, but nothing too crazy.
Make that bass drop.
Good stuff. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Just a lot of layers, making sure nothing is overcrowding each other, giving everything its own space. Instead of trying to make one synth really big, throw on a second synth and add some effects to it. Oh, the mastering chain. So first thing in the mastering chain is REQ, and I have my own preset, 30 hertz cut. You can do a cut at 21K. Most people don't know what 22 or 23K even sounds like, and it helps because it's less information to hit the compressor. I'm using the Shadow Hills compressor for this one. It's a dual opto mastering compressor, I believe. I have a go-to preset, which is just mastering loud, which just works for dance music like this. It's fast attack, fast release. It's loud. There's a little bit of gain. But, yeah. OTT, it's usually around 10, 11%, just to add a little bit of highs or lows. This shouldn't be here. This is a joke reverb. That kind of simulates a big club. Actually, you know what? Fuck it, I'll play it. I'll turn it on, I'll play it. If I'm making the tracks with headphones on and it sounds too dense, sometimes I'll throw this on for fun. And yeah, sounds like a club. This EQ shouldn't be here either, but it's good because this is how I check for bass and sub bass, make sure the bass line and the kick aren't interfering with each other or overcrowding each other, checking for if there's any rumble going on with anything. It's just a low pass to 120 hertz, and you just play the mix through it. And it's basically like listening through your mix through just a subwoofer, except if you don't have a subwoofer like I do, it's a pretty handy way to check your low ends. And then the L2, of course, -4, -1 to compensate for intersample peaking. I don't remember what this stuff does, so I just leave it. And yeah, and then this is what I actually use for mastering to check for loudness, and you can check various streaming platforms. I'm pretty new at using it, so if you're a mastering engineer watching this and this looks awful, whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much the track. Made it in about 3 weeks, which is relatively quick for me. And if you guys have any questions regarding the synths, the mixing, the production, if there's anything I missed, feel free to drop a comment, shoot me a DM, and yeah, thanks for watching. If you guys enjoy these, let me know. I'm happy to share more little tips and little secrets that I use in the tracks. I'm all about keeping things open and available. So yeah, thanks for watching.